Now, this is a wonderful lesson. And it has all kinds of familiar verses in it about God's protection of us. But I found some different things being emphasized. In the responsive reading, for example, the idea of habitation, a city of habitation, no city to dwell in when people were in darkness. Let's see. From Psalm 107, we say that they were in the wilderness, people were in the wilderness, and found no city to dwell in. And then in verse 7, God led them by the right way that they may go to a city of habitation. And I think that what causes them to come to a city of habitation is the recognition of their spiritual nature, that they were created like little turtles with their home right on their backs. And it's in the secret place of the Most High. The verses put together in the responsive reading just seem to me like chords that have built on the 91st Psalm, making a kind of symphony, a repetition of the same kind of promises of maintenance and protection, with the additional fullness of the sense of the use of the word habitation. Now, 91st Psalm is, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And that takes care of what we inhabit. But the word habitation was not used, as far as I know, in the 91st Psalm. And I think it helps very much to have these particular verses in the responsive reading to help us address present problems in the world, which we are supposed to, in our prayers, address. Homelessness, and later on, the fact that the earth is a compound idea to be inhabited, and that addresses the constant cry from the media of nuclear destruction that could destroy the world. Now, we are spiritually in the atmosphere of love divine, and there is no destruction there. There's only safety for all mankind. We have to pray to take this lesson and, I think, address it to world situations also. The periodicals keep stressing that we have to pray for the earth very, very strongly. Okay. Section 1 has that wonderful expression, verse 14, I think it is, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And that is a description of me as a spiritual idea, and each of us as a spiritual idea. And the fearfully is just respected. Fear is respect, and of course wonderful is wonderful. We have, I think, one of the strongest section 1 that I've encountered, and it is the foundation for so many of the other sections to come. Let's see. Mrs. Eddy is quoted here in this from Footsteps of Truth, Recapitulation, Science of Being, Recapitulation again, Recapitulation again. And they are facts. I mean, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the truth. There's no other truth. These are the facts. And then the rest of the lesson establishes those facts in action with the Bible selections and so forth. If we go to section 1, the Bible part, of course, one of my favorite verses is, "Take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea. Even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. And then I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made." This is my spiritual inheritance, my spiritual location, my spiritual habitation with the wings of the morning. It's so beautiful. And then in section 1 also, in Psalm 32, verse 7, "Thou art my hiding place." Reminds me of the 91st Psalm. "Thou shalt preserve me from trouble. Thou shalt compass me about with songs of deliverance." And that was a very new kind of emphasis. I had been reading, well, I thought right away of songs that Peter sang when he was chained in prison. And then the singing of the songs gave him deliverance. I remember reading something in a biography of Mrs. Eddy that someone was talking to her about a case that seemed to not be yielding, and she said, "Oh, that's just fear. Sing some hymns, sing some songs, and you will be free." So I was then attracted to Anthology 3. There is a wonderful article called "The Song of Christian Science," and gives you a sense of the power of song to spiritualize your thought, lift you from fear, and get you healed. So I suggest that as a lovely concomitant. Okay, and also I seem to be stuck in section 1, but I thought it was such a strong section. The very last sentence in section 1, "Security for the claims of harmonious and eternal being is found only in divine science." They're all strong words, the facts of divine science, only in divine science. She pulls no punches. But somewhere in there is the word sweet sense. So we have that lovely aura of the love, which is at the base of divine science. But she's just very, very sure. Section 2 has one of my favorite characters in the Old Testament, Jehoshaphat. My favorite Old Testament character, I guess, second to one or two others like Joseph. But I love Jehoshaphat because he goes to the Lord, which a lot of the leaders of Israel didn't do at first. Put the trust in the Lord. And he had his people, in verse 22, when they began to sing and to praise the Lord, and to praise, the Lord set ambushments against the children of Ammon, Moab, and Mount Seir, which were come against Judah. So there's song again. There's praise again. And praise that God is doing the battle. And we are God's humble servants. So I just got carried away with songs. Okay. And then, interestingly, in section 2, is that suggestion of trials, which has always been the most difficult sentence for me to take in Christian Science. But I think I'm beginning to understand that trials are proofs of God's care. That essentially, I don't know whether this is in the lesson or this is in what I read in the anthology, but you must take up the cross because it leads to the crown. And the cross are the challenges that were given to demonstrate Christian Science. And that's why they are proofs of God's care, because we always come out of them improved and heading toward the crown. You don't have the crown without the cross. Okay, now let's see if I can just get a little faster here. I did songs, and then 3 is Elisha and the woman, and I think that the major thought brought out in that in Science and Health is 14, and it's 302:8. It's impossible that man should lose aught that is real when God is all and eternally his. So the loss of a home, the loss of finances, so many are feeling a sense of loss of joy in life and so forth. But the only thing that we can lose is mortal belief. And that's the only thing that will be lost. So I think that addresses the world's problems too, as well as our personal problems. Okay. The only thing, the breaking up of material beliefs may seem to be famine and pestilence, want and woe, sin, sickness, and death, which assume new phases until their nothingness appears. These disturbances will continue until the end of error, when all discord will be swallowed up in spiritual truth. So if we cling to that and to our spiritual nature, then we are not so terrified by what they're saying on the media about everything that's being lost. Okay, and then section 4 is the wonderful healing of the blind person with this very strong statement. There is more Christianity in seeing and hearing spiritually than materially. And in the anthology, there is a wonderful article called Mind Sees. And I suggest everybody read it. It's just absolutely inspirational. Okay? Third, it's all the third, yeah. Let's see. I've discovered something that sets, I know we're trying to build bridges between us and other Christian sects, but I have found some very important and fundamental differences. That Mrs. Eddy's explanation in God, the sustainer of man, or the preserver of man, is very clear in her statement of what is going on that is destruction. It's a destruction not caused by an angry God. That is unique to Christian Science, because all the Bible study people we've had have God as inflicting upon man his anger, etc. And right now we have a Baptist preacher as our Bible study person, and that is just entirely different in Christian Science from what it is in other religions, where they believe that God punishes man, makes him capable of sin, then punishes him for the sin. And it just makes the hair on my back of my neck stand up when I hear it. I don't say anything. I just recognize that's why they come to the conclusions they come to. They've got an angry Jehovah as God, rather than mind, principle, soul, life, truth, and love. And I'm so grateful to Mrs. Eddy. The more I hear of other religions' beliefs, I'm so grateful that she saw it and she passed it on to us. God's unerring direction is a wonderful phrase. God's unerring direction. Another one talks about accidents and the viper, etc. God's unerring directions. Now I forget what I was going to tell you about it. But that's probably enough. It's just a wonderful, wonderful. Let's see what happens. Oh yes, here it is. One of my favorite characterizations of God, the Christian Science God, came from Jesus when he said, "Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." Isn't that lovely? That's the essence of divine love, and so different from a punishing Jehovah who set man up to sin and then punished him for sin. And she says, in the last section, I think it is, yes, she says, the trials encountered by prophet, disciple, and apostle, of whom the world was not worthy, await in some form every pioneer of truth. You will encounter storms, but this is the cross. Take it up and bear it, for through it you win and wear the crown. Pilgrim on earth, thy home is heaven. Stranger, thou art the guest of God. Such a reassurance of the God of love, not the really pagan God that Jehovah seemed to be. And all because she established through healing that God is spirit, and we were made in his image and likeness. Therefore, we are spiritual. Okie doke. How's that?